There's no concrete number.
You have to sit in it for 2 hours straight.
I know. It's like, you might hate us after if you do that. Welcome back to another PT Pearl from the Optimal Body Podcast. I'm Doc Jen.
And I'm Dr. Dom.
And today we're talking about ground sitting and all the different variations. So we're going to go over 10 different things that you can do on the ground that is going to benefit, improve your mobility, and improve your health. Ground sitting is honestly so important and so neglected in today's world. But before we go through the 10 different positions that we recommend, and we're going to show you what to do with those as well, we also recommend subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss out on other PT Pearls and just other YouTube videos that we have coming out to address different pain points within the body.
How often do you think the average person sits on the floor throughout the day?
Oh, I don't know the statistics on this one exactly, but it's probably not very high.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder what percentage of people never touch their butt to the ground throughout the average day. Whenever people are asking us, what's the best position at work? Or how do I set up my desk, for the best possible ergonomic posture? The thing that we keep repeating is the best position is the next position.
And granted, it is hard if you're in an office and you're trying to do this, right? Maybe you can't do it, sanitary reasons aside, but... And
social norms. Mostly social norms.
Mostly. But if you can start to do it at home, you're looking through emails, you're watching TV, this is a great way to be able to get your mobility in without having to think about it, without having a structured session, and without saying, I don't have time for mobility.
Yeah, and doing it in a way that is actually going to be sustainable and is going to teach our body something. Everyone will think, I got my mobility and I did my 15 minutes. We live and are awake for 16 hours out of the day and moving. And so what positions are we holding throughout that full 16 hours? If you sit in a different position for 20 minutes and then 20 minutes and then 20 minutes, you're going to keep typing in those new mobility codes into your nervous system so that your hips and your knees and your ankles will start to develop different mobility rather than sitting for the majority of that 8 hours at work.
And the truth is, if you don't use it, you lose it. We've talked about this before. And when it comes to your mobility, if you're not putting yourself in those crisscross applesauce positions that we used to sit as we were little kids, we lose the ability to get back there. And a lot of people just say, I can't do that. Yes, you can't now, but it's probably the fact that you were able to at one time and you've lost the ability because you've lost the access back in there. And so we just want to provide the access back to your body. As we go through 10 different positions that we're going to go over in this podcast, we're going to really outline the benefits of what they do as you're sitting in these positions as well.
There is a variation of that position that you probably could sit in using something like a shorter ottoman or seat, or using something like a cushion or a yoga cushion. We have these Brentwood home yoga cushions that are amazing and we use all the time.
People ask me about these cushions every single time I post about it too, because it is so magical. The material that is in it and just the comfort that you get when you're using these different designs that they have as well. We're going to link that in the show notes as well, because
feels kind of like one of those corn bags that you heat up and put on yourself. That's what I...
Or like the bean bags that you used to sit in.
Or like a bean bag. That's
but
what I think of.
But it's actually a lot better.
Yeah. Great materials. Okay. So 10 positions.
Yeah.
Let's work our way through them. First and foremost, sitting crisscross applesauce, cross-legged. That's a great first place to go. And as Jen and I both are right now, we're sitting on this little bolster so that it raises our bottom a little bit just in case the external rotation at your hips is limited, which this position's great for, getting external rotation at your hips.
All these low sitting positions are really going to demand some work at your core as well, because as you're sitting in a lower position, in order to sit up, the whole point is that we want to feel our sit bones on the ground, which if you put your hand right underneath your bottom, you should feel those bony prominences. And if you cannot, if you're sitting and they kind of get tucked back or you're too far forward, that's where we get into weird positions in our back. But if we sit and we can feel those sit bones and we don't have our back supported against something, we make our core, our entire core from front to back kind of work a little bit, as well as getting that hip external rotation.
I just sat onto a little bit higher of an ottoman. So now I can let my legs relax down a little bit. I'm not getting as much of that hip flexion and external rotation. So might be a little more comfortable for somebody who's not used to sitting directly in cross-leg position.
Yeah. So just elevate your surface, elevate your body. It makes it so much better. And some people complain of, well, I'm sitting in that position. It hurts my ankles. Well, can you put a towel or can you put like a little cushion underneath your feet? You know, you can find creative ways to be able to sit in these positions and find comfort and support the body as needed while you're still improving that mobility just by spending time in it. Next position that we can go into is like a 90-90 position or a shin box. And you can also do that elevated as well. So if you just shift your body, you kind of point one foot backward and have the other leg in front of you. Now we're not only working hip external rotation, but we're actually working hip internal rotation in that back hip. So that foot that's kind of pointed out. And we lose our ability to get into this because a lot of regular stretches that we think about, like pigeon pose or just sitting in a low squat, you know, all these things kind of promote external rotation. We don't really think about internal rotation as much. So getting into this kind of seated position really helps. And I do recommend not 20 minutes full out.
Yeah. I mean, so if you're in 20 minutes and you do 10 on each side.
Yeah. Well, and you know,
or
there's no concrete like number.
You have to sit in it for 2 hours straight.
I know. It's like, you might hate us after if you do that. You know, it's really about that ability to kind of like, okay, I've been at the coffee table kind of working in this position. Now I'm going to go and switch to the other position.
This one Jen brought up, she said pancake sitting. I'm just like, what the heck's pancake sitting? So I guess that's what the gymnasts call it. When you go into like this straddle position, legs out in front, but you're kind of spreading them wide open as far as you can.
Yeah.
And Jen, literally, I've seen her working like this where she'll be on the floor, legs spread all the way out, and then she's like laying her elbows on the ground, typing on her computer. I can't quite get to the elbows on the ground.
But you could be on a coffee table.
Yes, but you can do this spreading. And I do it, and I spread my legs and work on the coffee table.
Yeah.
And this is going to really be helping your hamstrings. You'll probably feel some pull in the back of your legs and your hamstrings, and also in the adductors or on the inside of those legs.
Exactly. And a lot of people neglect these adductors. Like there's not a lot of stretching happening. We always think about your hip flexors and your hamstrings and all these stuff, but we don't think about what's happening on the inside or the outside of the body. And so getting into those adductors is huge.
So number 4 on the list, we're going to get into something a little more active. So it's not quite as passive. Well, you can be kind of just sitting on something. Kind of
passive, yeah.
But I just thought of it because this was one of Kelly's where he was just sitting in a low squat against the couch, which you definitely can do if you're
back
just
supported.
You know, back supported, which Jen is doing. I don't quite have the mobility for that. Or if it's just on the ottoman and you're kind of as if you're in a low squat position, but your bottom is resting on something right here, and you can use your elbows to push your arms all the way out and work right there on your computer.
Well, it's super comfy, and not only are you now getting into that full hip flexion position, but you're also working on that ankle mobility as well, which is so huge. All these things are just so areas that are so neglected within the body. And so, yes, we're doing a podcast on all of it because we want you to do it.
And also this is great because it helps you keep that upright upper back. It kind of helps you keep that extension in that upper back and start to understand how to keep your weight over those feet when you're in a low squat. So if it's not something you're comfortable with, getting into a low squat, just sitting more passively in it is really going to actively work some of the components to be able to do a deep low squat on your own.
And then the next position that we like to go into is like getting those knees into more range of motion. And so going into a short kneel. So there's variations that you can do. I personally like to get a little bit more comfort in my knees. So I would kind of prop up and support myself with my shins or my knees on a higher surface. Now I'm getting into full knee flexion. I'm still kind of upright and kind of having to support my core in this way, and I can work right in front of me.
I like the pain and torture. I'm just kidding. No, I do like to sit with something under my knees in general.
Well, and you can also use a bolster. Like if you don't quite have the range of motion in your knees, just put the bolster or a pillow or rolled up towels or something between your bottom and your heels, and you're going to help to create some space so that you're not putting as much knee tension directly on your knees. And then another little trick that you can do if you say, well, my ankles don't have good range of motion, like going flat, you can roll up a towel and stick it right underneath your ankles. And so that your feet have something to relax onto and don't feel like so pressured down into the floor.
And then how you can transition easily into the next one, and this is something that everyone could probably use a little bit of in their life, is big toe. So flip those big toes underneath and you'll start to notice how tight we are along those big toes, the bottom of the feet. This is going to help work so many different areas that people tend to be tight in.
If you have been dealing with like plantar fasciitis or anything like that, like, yes.
Yes, but just doing it again, like a couple minutes. Honestly, if you're getting down on the ground and sit like this for a minute or two, you'll start to be like, okay, I need to switch positions.
Which is okay. Even if it's like 10 seconds, do it for a little bit at least, and then go back to, you're going to rest into those ankles and then see if you can come back into it. And do it without shoes, sitting at a lower desk or at a coffee table. I like to, again, use a bolster to kind of prop my knee up. And then using like a couch or a poof or an ottoman or something that you can put your back foot on and then have yourself in a half kneeling position and you're working. Again, what is your pelvis doing? So we always want to be thinking of kind of tucking that tailbone under just a bit. We get that core kind of engaged and we get that good stretch along the quad, spending a few minutes there and then switching to the other side. Another one that I really like is just kind of, I'm like known to kind of bring one leg up and kind of sit in a relaxed position. But as you're kind of sitting in that relaxed position, you can actually get your ankle underneath you more, lean over that knee as much as you can, and then get some work done here. And you might notice I have tightness maybe in the back of the Achilles, the calf area, or maybe you feel work trying to lean over in the front of that shin area, which is all part of improving your ankle mobility. And so we want that front of the shin to work. We want that stretch to happen in the back.
All right, so number 9, we're going to transition into, and it's kind of like the pancake, but we're just going to be long sitting. So almost like you're sitting with both your legs out front, like a hamstring stretch. You're going to feel it mostly in the back of those legs. I'm sitting with my bottom a little bit elevated because if I'm sitting right on the ground, I might feel like I'm going to get pushed back a little bit too much.
Or round into the low back.
Yeah, or start rounding so that can compensate for some tight hamstrings.
This is like my favorite thing to do for work. So we're leaning over our bolsters right now. I have my elbows kind of supported. It puts me in a little bit more extension. So you could be just on the ground, but kind of having your body supported in some kind of way, whether elbows are on the ground or elbows are kind of propped, and working at your desk, or not at your desk, you probably wouldn't be at your desk, but working on your laptop just on the ground here is so incredibly huge and important to be able to get your back in a different position.
Thanks for tuning in for another PT Pearl. If you loved some of the positions or if you think that some of them would have been difficult for you, comment below. Let us know what you think. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get alerted every time we come out with new PT Pearls or anytime Doc Jen over here comes out with some of her mobility genius. And of course, we will see you next time on the Optimal Body Podcast.